calories are not equal. So counting calories and just looking at the packaging is not the right strategy. Also, who has time to control how many calories you have been eating? And who has time to control whether you have been active and sleeping well? No. But I still want you to explain why checking the calories on the packaging is not a right strategy. Because the energy content versus energy cost is not indicated on the packaging. So let's say that starch. So what is starch? Starch is a vegetable that is growing in the soil, and it's storing the sugar, the carbohydrates in the bulb. So it's, for example, the bulb celery, the white one that you can buy in autumn and winter, or beetroot, or carrot, or parsnip. And it has 4 calories per gram. So let's say that you eat 300 grams of, for example, even potatoes, yeah, which would be the portion size. So you can calculate how many calories it has. Glucose is basically a single molecule of sugar. Sucrose, the white sugar or demerara sugar or any other sugar, is 2 molecules together. And that has 3.75 calories. But we have to look at the energy cost. So because it's only 1 molecule, you can imagine it's not difficult for the body to break it down. So it doesn't have to spend and invest too much into chopping it with the enzyme. So it will invest around 6 to 8% of the content that you eat to process the food. When you look at protein, it has 4 calories per gram, but it needs 20 to 30% of what you eat to break it down. And why? Because if you look, for example, on this picture, it's a beautiful structure of the coiled protein, and it contains many amino acids coiled all together. So if you eat, for example, chicken, it comes in these large structures, and the body in the stomach and in the small intestine has enzymes that are like these chopping scissors, and they are going to chop, 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 chop. So larger the protein structure, more energy needs to be spent for it. So then, if the calorie content of the protein on the packaging was saying that it's, for example, 25 grams, you need to calculate minus 30% of the calories of the protein. So you actually consume less calories in that case. Then we need to look at the fat. And fat, every molecule of the fat or every gram of the fat has 9 calories. That is quite a lot if you compare it. So you think, oh, might be better to eat glucose, sugar, because it has less than fat. And on the top of it, energy cost is only 2 to 3%. And why is it so? So here you have to think, it's an extremely large molecule. Fat can have 151 molecules connected together. So 151 times chopping. And the body says, hey, that is actually quite difficult to utilize, to break it down into micelles. Well, I'm not going to do it because I would need quite a lot of lipase for it, which is the enzyme that is breaking down the fat. I will take only what I need. So maybe only 3% of what you have actually eaten. So when we were looking at how much fat was in this halloumi, it was 30 grams of fat, so it's a lot. But the body says, well, okay, I'm going to take maybe 5-6 grams of fat from this meal, and the rest I just let go. And where does it go? So it's traveling through the intestine, and because it wasn't broken down and it's a large structure, it cannot be absorbed through the gastrointestinal membrane and doesn't get into the bloodstream and doesn't get into the liver. It gets to the microbiota, but microbiota likes only sugar. Bacteria like to eat sugar so that it can ferment and create some gas and bloating. This is not good food for them. They don't eat food. They don't eat fat. So it's going to be eliminated in the stool. So sometimes when you overdo it on eating fat, maybe you see that you have kind of like slimy, runny, meshy stool, and you have to use quite a lot of toilet paper to wipe out, and also the toilet is all dirty. Well, sorry, it was a little bit like disgusting, this description, but at least you know that every food that you eat has impact on your digestion and elimination. Now we look at the alcohol. So alcohol is quite high in calories, but surprisingly, you need 10 to 30% of the energy investment to process the alcohol. And why? Because alcohol is a toxin, yeah? And your liver needs to break it down and detoxify. And that is a lot of work for your liver. So hence, I don't recommend drinking alcohol. And even if you look at it, so 7 calories per gram. So if you have 100 grams, which is 100 milliliters, which is a very, very small amount of wine, it's lots of calories compared to, for example, protein. So now, knowing what are the macronutrients, let's dive deeper into the carbohydrates, because carbohydrates, I want you to understand why you need to cut down carbohydrates. And I want you to understand that carbohydrates are absolutely everywhere. It has many names. So we have monosaccharides, that is basically just that one molecule, and that is glucose. And for example, even when you buy vitamins and it's in tablets, there is glucose or fructose or any kind of syrup, which is a single molecule of sugar, which means that the sugar immediately penetrates the gastrointestinal wall and gets into the bloodstream, and it will increase the blood glucose levels. Fructose, it's fruit, it's single molecule. Again, immediately, even if you eat apple, or the worst, if you juice the fresh apple, therefore you remove the fiber that was at least holding the sugar away from the bloodstream. So you juice, you make this fresh juice, and then you drink it, and you are basically puring your body with sugar, increasing the blood glucose levels. The same goes for orange juice. The same goes for carrot juice. It's basically all sugar. I encourage you to eat vegetable and fruit, but in its whole state. Then we look at the disaccharides. So it's 2 molecules connected together. Sucrose is the sugar, the demerara sugar, the brown sugar, the white sugar. They all have the same structure and they have the same amount of calories. So sucrose is going to be broken down into 2 molecules of glucose. Lactose, and we were looking at the packaging of the kefir. So that's why kefir has 4.1 grams of sugar, because there is lactose disaccharide. So this lactose has 2 molecules, gets broken down into galactose and glucose. So again, very easily hits the bloodstream with the sugar. And then we have polysaccharides, which means 10 molecules of glucose connected together. Only 10. It's not enough. If you know that fat was like 151 molecules. So again, starch, any starchy vegetable. And if you download my shopping list, there is a section with the starchy vegetable, and you will know which ones you need to keep under control. And there is a section of non-starchy vegetable that you can eat in unlimited amount, because there is a very small amount of fiber and glucose. Glycogen, what is glycogen? Glycogen is basically the storage of sugar in our body, in the liver and in the muscle. So more muscle mass you have, and when we talk about exercise, I will explain how to build the muscle mass. So more muscle mass you have, more glycogen you can store, more glucose you can store. If you don't have muscle, you cannot store it. And therefore, liver is going to turn any carbohydrate that you eat into fat, and it's going to be stored as a belly fat or visceral fat around your organs, and it's going to suffocate your organs. It's going to be much more difficult for your heart to pump, because the fat is all around it, and you might even grow fatty liver. Yeah, so that's why we want to again keep the glucose under control, and cellulose is basically the fiber. Do we need glucose? If you know all of this, I'm sure you already have the answer. The answer is that we need only a small amount to make ourselves happy, and the rest our body can make in a process of gluconeogenesis. Glucose, new genesis, to create. How can our body create glucose even if we are fasting, therefore not eating? Because our body is extremely smart. Our body knows how to break down the fat cells if there is no any other energy, and in a liver it can turn it into glucose, and this glucose is then circulating and feeding the cells in the body. And the same can be done with amino acids, the protein. So when you are eating only protein and vegetable, you can still turn the protein into the glucose. And in that case, you are going to actually speed up the metabolism, because by consuming only carbohydrates, it's easy source of energy. And therefore, the body doesn't need to invest too much energy. And the metabolism is slow. So we don't need as much. As soon as you shift into putting pressure on your body and you make it work harder by breaking down the fat cells and by breaking down the protein, you are actually going to speed up your metabolism. So I encourage you to, again, take the ingredients that you eat, for example, fromage blanc, which is quark, and check how much glucose is there. 3.5 grams in 100 grams, for example, or even, for example, spices. So this is my favorite, spices, but even when I look at it, there is sugar. So there is 24 grams of sugar in 100 grams, so in the whole package. Of course, I'm not going to use the whole package. I'm going to use probably 1, maximum 2 spoons. So maybe only 2 grams of sugar. But adding a little sugar here and little sugar there, I might reach the point that is then stopping me from losing the weight. So when you are checking the packaging, maybe you are using agave syrup, but agave syrup is a highly processed syrup, concentrated syrup. It's like when you juice 20 apples and then you are boiling it, and you extract it into 100 milliliters of a apple juice sauce. In that 100 milliliters of apple juice sauce, you have 20 apples. Would you ever really eat 20 apples? And the answer is no. And the same with agave syrup. Would you eat 20 kilos of flesh of the agave? You wouldn't. So why to buy agave syrup? And why do you think it's any better than a white sugar? If you are going to bake a cake, buy a locally sourced white beet sugar, save the money, and make the same impact on your body. Dates are actually the worst, and in the next following slides, I'm going to show you why. But now we need to get to the next challenge. I want to know if you are a hybrid car. And now you don't know what is actually a hybrid car. So hybrid car is that if I ask you not to eat for 20 hours, would you be able to flow through your day with ease? Or would you notice difference in your energy levels? So if you notice a difference in your energy level, that means that you are not a hybrid car, because hybrid car, while you are driving, can easily switch in between using the source of, so electric or diesel, and the same is fat and carbohydrates. So if until now you were used to having carbohydrates in every meal, even this hidden carbohydrates, and you were snacking, so you were eating 5 times a day because you had little snack here, little snack there, coffee here with a little biscuit, you were constantly driving on carbohydrates, on sugar, on glucose. And then your body has a slower metabolism and doesn't really want to tap into the fat stores. So if over the years you were just accumulating the fat on your body and never really utilizing it, you are not able to switch. What you can do to become a hybrid car is grow a healthy microbiota. And we had a lecture on how to grow a healthy microbiota and having diversity in your meals. So I encourage you to look at what you are eating now. So if your habit was to, for example, have yogurt with granola and one apple pretty much every day, what about shifting it and starting with your breakfast at 10 o'clock and starting with eggs? And having the diversity, eggs, maybe protein pancakes, maybe kefir, maybe chia seeds pudding. You want to challenge your metabolism. You want that one day it actually gets enough food and needs to work it hard. And then the next day you are fasting for 20 hours and there is no food. And therefore the body says, but no problem. I'm anyway going to work my usual hours, but by just taking it from the fat store. And in other videos, we are going to talk about cyclical fasting and intuitive fasting. So it's a full subject for hours and hours so that you understand how you can do it and implement it in which time of the day and based on your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and even, for example, the moon cycle. So I also encourage you to look at your hormones. Is your menstrual cycle regular? What is your insulin levels looking like? But for this, you would need a blood test results and analysis. And insulin, the anabolic hormone, is very important in this hybrid car, because every time when you are spiking insulin, it's like a guard. And I'm going to show you. Imagine you have a bank account and insulin easily allows you to save the money on your bank account. It likes to accumulate the energy. This bank account can be your fat cells. It can be in the liver, the storage of glycogen, the sugar, or in the muscle, the glycogen. So whenever you are eating, the insulin is released from the pancreas, from beta cells, and is circulating in the bloodstream. And because it's anabolic hormone, we need it for building. So it's building either the fat, and you are gaining the weight. It's if you eat protein, and protein also needs insulin, it's going to build the muscle. Also, if you have insulin and cortisol, the stress hormone, it's going to actually increase it and multiply it. So sometimes you might not be stressed only from psychological stress, but it can be even this chemical and mechanical stress happening in your body. And you have full control over it by eating the meals that are not spiking insulin, and I will teach you how to do it. Maybe when you are checking your blood test results, you also see that your progesterone levels are down, and this is due to insulin. So every time when you have high levels of insulin, it's actually promoting estrogen, and estrogen dominance is causing endometriosis, breast cancer, and any fibroids in the body. So even fibroids in the breast. That's why you can sometimes like feel the hardness in your breast. However, it's decreasing the progesterone, the hormone that we actually need for a regular flow, for mood, for good sleep, and so on. So I encourage you to reflect on your period and on the balance of your hormones. Maybe you have also noticed that you are losing the hair. So when you have high levels of insulin and you have low levels of progesterone, you might be losing the hair, or maybe even your eyebrow because it has impact on your thyroid hormone. So again, you need to get your thyroid hormones checked, not only the TSH that is in the brain, but also the active T3 and active T4 and the reverse T3, which is a sign of metabolic syndrome. You also maybe notice that if you have imbalance in your hormones, you are growing the facial hair. So while you are losing the hair, you are growing the hair in other places, and maybe even acne, this adult acne. It can be even cysts. It can be on your back. It can be on your bum. It can be in very unusual places. So this is what it looks like when you have hormonal imbalance and insulin imbalance. Another lecture, and this one is really necessary. So every time when you're eating carbohydrates, no matter if they are complex or single, you are flooding your bloodstream with glucose. So the glucose penetrates very quickly the intestinal wall, and our body is going to detect the levels of glucose. So more glucose you have, it actually is dangerous because it's leading to hyperglycemia. That's what's happening to diabetic people. But before they reach this point, they suffer with hypoglycemia. So it wakes them up in the night, they have a drowsiness, but I tell you more about it later on. So our body is very smart, and it's going to increase the level of insulin, this anabolic hormone, the builder of everything. So it's released. And if everything works normally and we have a normal, healthy cell with fluidity and all the receptors working properly, insulin is going to connect to one part of the receptor, and then the cell is going to open this gate, and the red ball is going to penetrate inside and will enter into the mitochondria, the energy center, and in this electron transport chain is going to create ATP, the adenosine triphosphate, which is a currency, money for the body. So 3 ATP you need to pay for the muscle to contract. Then you pay 3 for muscle to relax. If you don't have this energy, chances are there is some mistake and you might have cramps, or you might have body pain. This is fibromyalgia. Even when you are like touching some points on your body, you feel the pain. This is usually the imbalance in the energy creation. And what is very often seen in the blood test results is insulin resistance, which means that these cells, they were overloaded by the amount of carbohydrates that you were eating, or by the amount of stress, the cortisol that you were pumping into your bloodstream, and therefore increasing the glucose, that this cell said, look, like no more, I'm just not going to work, I'm going on strike. Yeah. And they block the receptors. They basically put the chains on the door, curtains, and they don't take anything that you eat. So you eat even a healthy quinoa, you are flooding your bloodstream with red balls. Your body is sending the blue balls of the insulin. Insulin is knocking on the door. The cells are inactive. And now what? This is called insulin resistance. You have no energy because the cells are not creating it. You feel extremely drowsy. Yet you have been just eating something. Yet you have high levels of insulin. So liver is going to save you. And liver is going to process the glucose. It's going to turn it into the fat and store it either in the belly or in your breast or your arms or your back. So you are going to have this buffalo hump. You have so much fat everywhere on your body, not anymore on your bum, not anymore on your legs. It's everywhere on the body. This is a sign of insulin resistance. Yeah? So now you are asking, oh, so how do I know? Am I riding the blood glucose roller coaster? So answer yourself. Do you feel low energy throughout the day? Do you feel drowsy and like, oh, you could just sit on the sofa and relax a little bit? Is it difficult for you to go without snacking or eating for more than 5 hours? Because it actually makes you dizzy. You cannot exercise because you are dizzy. Or maybe if you skip a dinner, you actually feel really irritable and like shaky. And it's hard for you to concentrate or anything that you do because all you want is food. Do you often crave food like carbohydrates to snack on something sweet to pick you up? Do you need coffee to relieve the fatigue? Or is broccoli going to help you to satisfy your urge of eating? Yeah. So if it's broccoli, all is good. Is it difficult for you to lose the belly fat? Are you waking up at night, therefore dipping down into the hypoglycemia, which is extreme stress for your body? It's going to increase the cortisol. Cortisol is going to increase the glucose levels and it's going to wake you up. Do you need to urinate, which means that actually the glucose is like extracting the water and it's making you to go to the toilet? Or do you feel thirsty during the day? So all these are signs of the insulin resistance. Maybe another one, and it's a little bit more advanced, is when you have a slow wound healing, especially on the legs. These are then like diabetic legs. They have like ulcers, they have a scratch that cannot heal, maybe even around the nails, maybe even something on your face. It's just not healing properly. Maybe you're using corticosteroids from a dermatologist, you have some skin issues, and you have high cholesterol levels. So these are all the things that are impacting. So insulin resistance is having impact on all of these. So PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, atherosclerosis, lipid problems, hypertension, and so on and so on. So again, I would encourage you to get your blood test results and get them checked by a professional, preferably holistic nutritionist or a functional medicine practitioner. You can also measure your hip-waist ratio and mostly the inflammation. So let's also look at the energy balance equation. We know that you need to create a caloric deficit if you want to tap into the storage of the fat. 1,200 calories, it's kind of a recommended amount if you are trying to do it on your own. If you were working with a professional and you would already notice that you have a serious pre-diabetic state or maybe cancer or any other degenerative disease that might have a negative impact on your aging, then you would maybe even want to consider 700, 800 calories, but under control of a professional. So what you want to remember is that you don't want to create scarcity or fear. You don't want to scare your body. So you need to kind of stick to what you were used to until now, but made there small, sustainable alternative tweaks. Because imagine, if, for example, I get a salary of 1,200 euro and my rent is 1,200 euro, I will have a feeling of scarcity, and I will actually have a fear that I cannot pay food for my children, I cannot invest into education, I cannot pay my web designer and like other people around me, I cannot pay the rent of my office and so on. So I am in this like deficit and energy saving mode. I would start to think, how can I cut down my cost? Am I going to buy less food? Am I going to move to a smaller apartment? And it is not helping me. What I want is to eat, and I want you to eat enough of the calories, but those ones that are actually making you to invest more. So there is this investment. So for example, let's say that if you eat kale, spinach, and you eat a large amount of it, your body actually needs to work hard, and you have this feeling of satisfaction because the portion is big, you can eat as much of it as you want. So there is no scarcity. And also, I want to introduce you to the set point theory, which basically means that your body, for the past years that you were fighting with your weight or with your health issues and disease, got used to new set point. And it takes around 2 years to change this set point. So it's not going to happen overnight. And that's why you need to work on something that is sustainable for you for 2 years. So if it's not sustainable for you to make intermittent fasting or eat only 2 meals per day, then you need to think about the strategy of having, for example, 3 meals, larger meals, and feel satisfied. So this is very individual. What you want to avoid is the yo-yo effect of this weight loss, relapse, and regain. So I encourage you now, again, to reflect of what is, based on your lifestyle, sustainable for you. How many meals do you need? And which meal can you actually skip? Is it the snack? Is it the breakfast? Is it the dinner?